Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Untold Story. I'm Martha McCallum, anchor of The Story, and it's always great to have all of you with us for our podcast, which we do twice a week. And today we're really lucky to have Marc Thiessen with us. Marc is, as you know, a very frequent contributor at Fox News and one of our finest. He also was a speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and he is a columnist for the Washington Post and writes some of their very best columns. So too bad you have nothing to write about these days, Marc.
No, it's very weak news environment. I'm stretching for topics.
So let me start with this. You know, are you surprised by how quickly the pendulum swung to Kamala Harris? I got to say, I've been watching her for years now. I have never seen her more relaxed or happy than she looks in the past couple of days.
Yeah, well, the whole world has come right at her feet very quickly. On Sunday, she said that she was looking forward to earning and winning the nomination, and here we are a couple days later, and she's racked up the delegates and apparently is the nominee. I mean, it's interesting the fact that nobody has challenged her. Mm-hmm. You've got you got a lot more electable Democrats out there. You got Mark Kelly, you've got Josh Shapiro, you have sort of Brashear, some of these moderate centrist Democrats who could really present a much more benign alternative to Trump for these swing voters, and none of them has gotten into the race, and you have to ask yourself why. And I got two theories on it. One is that they don't want to be called racists. And Kamala Harris, remember, called Joe Biden a racist during the primaries. They don't want to be the white male in the party of identity politics who tried to oust the first black female nominee of a major party for president. And she would have gone for the race card, believe me. And so they don't want to get tarred by that. They don't want to get crosswise the Congressional Black Caucus. They don't want to get crosswise of Jim Clyburn. So there's no upside to that, especially if you might not even win. And that would really hurt you going down the line. And second of all, why do you want to become the captain of the Titanic just before it hits an iceberg? All the polls show that she doesn't do any better against Trump than Joe Biden did, at least so far. Maybe she'll perform better on the campaign trail. I mean, it's why you play the game, so she could win. But she doesn't look like she's poised to win. And so Donald Trump, if he wins, is going to be a one-term president because he's already served his first term. And so you'll have an open seat to run for in 4 years. So why would you go, charging up against the first black woman presidential candidate in the party of identity politics when you could lose it, when you could just sit back and let Donald Trump beat her and then run for an open seat against J.D. Vance or against whoever, or Nikki Haley or whoever is the nominee after that. So there's no upside for them to run against her.
You know, I'm a little surprised with how quickly it happened, but my theory, and I think your theory is great, my theory in part is that there was so much exhaustion and stress from the getting Biden out process, right? And I think they had hoped it would happen when it came time to announce, and he announced in April of 2023 that he was going to run. He had some wind in his sails from the midterms in 2022. And I think that he felt that, you know what, I'm not so bad at this. I'm the only one who said that it wasn't going to be a red wave. And you know what, it wasn't. And so I think that put some wind in his sails at that point, right after those midterms. But I think that there's panic and chaos and exhaustion, and then this enormous relief when he steps aside. And I think it was like, okay, let's just be done with this. This is the easiest route, clearly, to pick the vice president. And honestly, if I'm in her shoes, I would be very upset if they didn't choose me. I mean, she is the vice president of the United States. She has a legitimate argument to say, look, I'm next in line. It's the biggest part of my whole job.
Yeah, I'm one heartbeat away from the presidency, but I can't be one heartbeat away from the nomination. Exactly. I think you're 100% right. And also, they've got 107, 106 days until election day. Did they really want to burn 2 or 3 weeks of that, having a big inter-party fight after having spent the last 2 or 3 weeks in a big inter-party fight over getting him off the nomination? And it also shows another thing, which is that they really don't believe their own rhetoric that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Because if you're a Brashear or a Shapiro or a Mark Kelly or some of these more moderate centrist Democrats, if Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, you better get in there. You better save your party. You better stop him. Because why would you let Kamala Harris, who is, keep in mind that people have not focused a lot on her. She's effectively a member of the squad. She was ranked by GovTrack as a senator, as out of 100 senators, the most liberal senator to the left of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. She supports Medicare for all. She supports the Green New Deal. She said she wants to eliminate fracking. She actually went and campaigned at an abortion clinic, the first major party candidate to ever do that in the history of our country. Trump is going to paint her as an abortion extremist, which is not where the country is, even on that issue. This is not the best nominee for their party to have. At least Joe Biden gave them the veneer of moderation, even though he was sort of a Trojan horse for socialism. He gave them the moderate veneer when they went left. There's no veneer with her. She is the full, she's a democratic socialist. She's up there with AOC and Bernie Sanders and the whole squad. And so they've got a squad nominee. Let's see how she does.
It's interesting. I mean, when I was looking at her policies, because we're all digging back into what she has done in the past, what is her record? And you look back at the Black Lives Matter moment and the riots that happened around the country. She was funding bail funds for people and encouraging other people to send in money to bail out some of the agitators at these riots who were arrested for their actions during those riots. And I know CNN, I haven't taken a close look at it yet, but they did some investigative reporting on what happened with those people who were released in the fund that she was backing. And many of them ended up, committing offenses again and then being arrested again, which puts her in a difficult position around around the crime issue and around the chaos issue and around the destruction of our cities issues that I think will be ripe for President Trump if they do get to a debate in this situation.
100%. And also then the cover-up issue. She was the closest person to Joe Biden in this administration. She had lunch with him every week, and she basically told the American people, in private he's doing backflips. He's sharp as a tack, and it was a lie. And she was the liar in chief when it came to this. And then the other thing that people do, one of the problems with not having a primary process is you don't test the mettle of your candidates. It's like the preseason in hockey, right? You go out and you try out the new recruits and see how they do on the ice and see if they're ready for the NHL. Like, nobody tested her except in 2020 when she flamed out, right? Has she gotten any better in 4 years? And so, if you look at how the Democrats freaked out over Joe Biden's disastrous performance, what if she has a disastrous debate performance? What if she has a disastrous interview? This is a woman who literally, she has this grating quality. The reason why she hasn't connected, she has this grating quality of saying deeply stupid things with a deeply profound voice. Like in the interview where she says, so Ukraine is a small country. That's next to a big country called Russia. And the big country invaded the small country, and that's wrong. She talks to the American people like they're stupid. Like
they're third graders, I know. I remember, and I was just reminded as you were speaking about that of the AI. It's really not that complicated. It just stands for artificial intelligence. So, we'll see. I thought it was very interesting in her first comments yesterday after she was, coronated, as many are saying. She made a point to say that I, won my election for district attorney in San Francisco, and then I won my Senate election to the United States Senate, and then I won my vice presidency on the ticket with Joe Biden. So I do think that she has an argument to make, Mark, for people who say, she did flame out in the presidential election, but she has won elections successfully.
Yeah, well, she won California very narrow. I think in her attorney general race, it was she won by like a point or two or something like that. It was not an overwhelming victory. And I mean, she was just a terrible candidate in the presidential campaign in 2020. She didn't even make it to Iowa. I mean, here's the thing: Kamala Harris has never won a presidential primary vote in 2 presidential elections, not once. You know who has more votes than her? Marianne Williamson. Who has more votes than her? Uncommitted. Right. Uncommitted has more primary votes than Kamala Harris. So you got somebody who's completely untested, and you got 100 days to make them president.
The Untold Story continues right after this.
But let me just play the other side of the coin here and kick the tires a little bit. This is a very close race. It was a close race when Biden was in. Donald Trump had a wonderful week at the RNC. The assassination attempt, as horrible as it was, put him in a very strong light and a very patriotic light. I was amazed, Mark Zuckerberg, in an interview the other day said, I'm going to stay on the sidelines. I've been active in the past in elections, and we know that he did a lot of get out the vote funding, some of which people had questions about with regard to Wisconsin and other places. And, President Trump called him Zuckerberg. But he said, I'm going to stay on the sidelines. But when I look at what happened on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, and I see, former President Trump pumping his fist, I cannot help but feel patriotic. And I think most Americans feel the same. Yeah. I'm paraphrasing here, but I don't know. Does he change his mind now that it's Kamala Harris? Was that just because it was Joe Biden he wants to stay on the sidelines? What do you think, Mark?
I don't know, but I also don't know how many votes Zuckerberg brings to either side. If you've got Elon Musk now coming in doing the opposite of what Zuckerberg did the last time around with his super PAC that he's forming. But look, what the assassination has done is it's taken away the only issue the Democrats had, because look, they're losing on immigration, they're losing on inflation. The Biden-Harris administration was double-digit disapproval on every major issue that people care about except abortion, right? And democracy, and even democracy was kind of neutral. Donald Trump had a great line the other day. He said, "I took a bullet for democracy." That's powerful. It's at least neutralized that issue for a lot of voters. And on top of that, they've just crowned their nominee. They didn't even have a contest. They ousted the sitting president and replaced him without a single vote. And they've now installed her by the votes of superdelegates, party elites. Tell me that this is the party of democracy? The voters didn't have a say in who their nominee is. So I don't know that Donald Trump wins the democracy issue, but it certainly neutralizes it for sure.
Well, you look at the states that it appears they're going to be focusing on. She's in Michigan right now. Michigan, very, very close race in 2020. Very close race in 2016 when Trump won, and 2020 when Biden won. One question is, and it's interesting because I remember President Trump saying this before all of this happened, that he was picking, J.D. Vance, and he said, it was before he picked Vance, excuse me. And he said, I have to pick a vice president, and I don't even know who the people are on the other ticket at this point. I don't know how this is all going to shake out, right? And there is some discussion about whether or not other people might have been a better pick for this equation. When you've got Harris at the top of the ticket, and let's just throw in Mark Kelly or Roy Cooper in the second spot. Would there have been a better pick than Vance for that battle?
Oh, 100%. Look, this was a pick of a president who thought he had the election wrapped up. Joe Biden he had crushed him in the debate. I don't know that he really believed that they would actually remove him from office. And this was the kind of pick you pick if you think you've got the election wrapped up and you wanted a loyalist in a position. It was not a vice president chosen to expand the vote and to build your coalition. Look, what Donald Trump needs to understand, I think, is that this election is not won yet. He's in a very strong position to win it, but it's not won yet. And he needs to focus, and I wish he had done it with his vice presidential pick. He did it a little bit with his convention speech, a little bit not. Everything that he does should be focused. Right now, his base is so fired up, they will walk over hot coals to vote for him. He does not need to put gasoline on that fire at all. He just needs to keep blowing on it a little bit to keep the embers hot. But what he needs to focus on is winning those voters who are disappointed with Joe Biden, who might have voted for Joe Biden because they were afraid, because they wanted to end the chaos in 2020, and they got more chaos. They're unhappy with Biden and Harris. They don't like her necessarily, but they're not sure about Trump. And they're willing to give him a look, but he's got to make the sale. And he's a great salesman. He's a great deal maker. He's got to close the deal with those voters. This is a real estate mogul knows to understand. You got to understand your target market, and you got to close the deal. And he can do that. I think he's shown more discipline in this campaign than he has in previous campaigns. I think the start of his convention speech was focused entirely on that before it devolved into a Trump rally. And I've got a theory on why he did that. I think he needed to finish the rally. His rally had been interrupted. He was with his people again. It was the first time he was with his people, and I think he just felt he needed to finish it. I think that was a strategic mistake, but the start of the speech was really good and made the sale. If he could focus on the first third of that speech and make that his campaign theme going forward, I think he's got a very good shot at winning this.
Yeah, he had one section in the speech that I marked down. I don't have it in front of me right now, but basically it was like, people have told you to lower your expectations. And I want us to raise our expectations. And I think that is something that resonates with moderate voters who feel that the culture of succeeding in this country and striving has been tamped down. And people have been told that, the best case scenario is to get basically your health care and your college paid for by the government. And we all can easily look at societies where that is the case, where the government pays for everything, and the quality of education and healthcare declines precipitously in those environments. And I think it's something, because those are two things that Kamala Harris feels strongly about. Basically, heading towards a single payer system, which is government healthcare, and not just relieving student debt, but just out and out paying for people to be able to go to college. And as I said, just empirically, when you look at the healthcare system and the education system in places where they do that, it tends to degrade both of those systems. Let's talk a little bit about voting, because this is a very tight election. It was a tight election before this happened, and it's a tight election still. And there are a lot of people. I was talking to Lee Carter yesterday about her polling. There's a lot of people who are already decided. I mean, the people who will never vote for Trump are deep in they were going to vote for Biden anyway, and now they're more enthusiastic because now they might actually leave home and go vote for Kamala Harris because they just want someone who isn't Donald Trump, and this is a younger version of that. So the undecideds appear to be pretty slim. And, when it comes to enthusiasm, intensity, and getting out the vote, Democrats are excellent at that. What's your assessment of how Republicans are doing on this? Because I see people holding up signs that say swamp the vote, and I hear a lot of talk about it. But in terms of the brass tacks and the machinery of that, is it any better this time around, Marc?
Yeah, so I think right now the energy gap or the enthusiasm gap favors the Republicans. I think after the assassination, again, walk over hot coals, walk over broken glass, whatever you call it, that his base is fired up. They are going to vote for him. They were already fired up by the lawfare. And now, that he's literally taken a bullet, they're willing to take a bullet for him. So I don't think he's going to have any trouble energizing his base. He needs to remember that he lost the 2020 election. And yes, he did lose the 2020 election by 42,091 votes in 3 states. All right. And that could happen. It could be decided by that small a number as well. Many of those voters are either swing voters who are undecided, or they're what they call double haters who don't like either one of them, don't like either party. And he's got to convince them to vote for him. And so all of his efforts have to be, I think the biggest strategic mistake he can make is the way to win this is just to pour gasoline on the fire and just overwhelm the other side. We got to throw red meat to the crowd. We got to get them fired up. Get our people to go out fast. They're going to do it. You don't need to do that. You need to present yourself as presidential. You need to win over those swing voters who are going to decide this election. The people who don't want the other side, don't like it. You got to give them the permission to vote in their self-interest. And you got to present yourself in a way that gives them, they can say, okay, I get it. I see that Trump, my life was, he's right. My life was better when Donald Trump was president than when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were running the country. And he's not going to annoy me the way he did the first time. I can tell he's changed. He's different this time. He needs to present that image. That's going to decide the election.
But, okay, what about the second part of my question? Ballot boxes have returned in a lot of places. I mean, drop box ballots. Yeah. There are places where you still have harvesting, where they paper the whole state. I believe California still does with ballots like we did during COVID. In terms of getting out the vote in the places where voters are, Democrats are very good at this. And this is, I'm not talking about illegal activity. I'm talking about walk right up to the edge activity. How are Republicans at this? And do you think they're any better at it now?
I hope they are. I mean, one of the problems we've had is railing against early voting sends a signal to people not to vote early. Right. We got to be better at harvesting. than they are. He's got to have, and one of the good news is that Elon Musk is putting in a lot of money into doing exactly that. So there's going to be a get out the vote operation. There's going to be a ballot harvesting operation. There's going to be an effort on early voting. And so, it makes no sense to rail against the rules. The rules are what they are.
Right.
If you're complaining about the refs, you're losing.
Right.
You got to just play the game better by the rules that exist.
Absolutely.
And we just got to be, Republicans just have to be better at it than the Democrats are. And that's what they need to focus on.
All right. We will see. Marc Thiessen, great to have you with us. I don't want to talk about any more things because if we do, something really big will happen between now and when this podcast goes out, and we'll have to redo it. But we'll do another one soon anyway. Thank you very much.
And on the air, now we got to have a long conversation. It was a lot of fun.
It's so fun. Always great to talk to you, Marc. Marc Thiessen is so smart and writes so well about the state of our country, and it's great to have him with us today. So, Marc, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us for The Untold Story today. I'm Martha McCallum. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Untold Story. I'm Martha McCallum. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Make sure to rate and review. For more podcasts, go to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.